Following the news for November 22nd, 2024, I am Brett Burney from appsandlaw.com.
And this is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD. Hey, Brett.
Good morning, Jeff. It's another week and another point update. This is iOS 18.1.1, right? Which, these small kind of what we sometimes call updates to apply to 0-day security flaws, which always sounds a little scary. But these little tiny incremental point updates, they go very fast. And it's just one of these things like, just do it. Like, don't even think about it. Don't hesitate, because they are usually resolving something that you probably haven't even looked at or been aware of, but it's just good to make sure that you have these updates in place.
Yeah, when you have the multiple points, point one, Apple doesn't release these a lot. What they really prefer to do is just the single point one updates, 18.1, 18.2.
Yeah.
And so for Apple to take the time to actually introduce this, that should raise a red flag and make you think, wow, why is Apple doing something without waiting for the next regular update? Which in this case is soon, right? Because we know the next update for the iOS is going to be about the first or second week of December, which is just around the corner. So why did Apple think this was so important that it couldn't wait 2 to 3 weeks? And the answer, as you said, is 0 day. And again, what that means is that this is not just a theoretical bug. This is a flaw that they not only know about, but they actually know it has been exploited by hackers to try to hack into machines. Now, I dug into this a little bit just to try to understand it, and what I understand is that it has to do with Safari is the bug, so people could use Safari to break into your machine and run arbitrary code. The only place that it has been exploited in the wild is on Intel Macs. So not an iPhone, not an iPad, and not even a new computer. However, that doesn't mean that it only works on Intel Macs. It just so happens that the version of the hack that they discovered actually being used by hackers was only on older Macs. And in theory, this same flaw, it would have to be adjusted, but hackers could adjust it to run. And so that's why when Apple found out about this, they're like, okay, we're not going to wait to see. First of all, anyone with an Intel Mac needs to update immediately. And second of all, even if you have a more modern Mac or an iPhone or an iPad, we're afraid the hackers might permutate it into. So you should do this one. And so I did the update. It was a quick one, like you said. There's no reason to wait. Again, you don't know that you're going to be targeted, but why risk it? So when Apple does these quick updates, they're trying to say, hey guys, we don't really think you should wait a couple of weeks. We think you should do this one now, and you should.
I always underscore, it's not like you shouldn't use Safari, like stop using Safari. This is like code that runs, and typically it's if you click on a link from a phishing email or something like that, it actually goes to a website that you shouldn't be going to, you would never go to otherwise. And so again, it's not like you have to stop using Safari, you should change or anything. It's just a very, very small incremental percentage of people that would even be affected by this. But all of that said, it is worth just making sure that you roll these up into and get them done as quickly as possible. And again, I just even did mine when I read your story today. I wasn't even aware. Sometimes it will pop up if you have the auto updates turned on. It'll pop up as a notification for you. But when I was doing reading through your stories this morning, Jeff, I saw it and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I can do that. And I know from past experience that these point one or these point updates, they go really fast. I just went into my general settings and I said, update. Yeah, there's an update. Go ahead and do that right now. And I mean, maybe it took 4 or 5 minutes. It'll reboot, the white apple comes on. Anyway, just all that to say, get that done on there. Now, what you were referring to was 18.2 is the next version that's coming up. But how about let's just talk. You had a couple of stories about 18.1 still, which is really what we generally call like the base version of the iOS today, even though we just talked about 0.1.1. But 18.1, boy, I've been seeing a lot of stories about the Apple intelligence summaries from messages or even from emails. But I think what I'm usually seeing a lot of people kind of bellyache about this is in the iMessages, in texting, Apple Intelligence or the new version of iOS 18.1 will summarize those text messages, and they don't always get it right. They don't even do it well, Jeff. I mean, there's just been some hilarious things. There's been some unfortunate, sad kind of sounding summaries out there, but it's great. And this was a good story, I think, from The Atlantic, from Lila Shroff that you linked to as well today.
Yeah, the features of Apple Intelligence that Apple released in 18.1 they were the low-hanging fruit, they were the easiest things to implement, but frankly,
Yeah.
they were also the least impressive. And when I'm everything I'm about to say about criticizing the summarize feature, let me be clear that I have the same critique about all of the AI systems. If you use Microsoft Copilot,
Okay.
because I have Copilot on my machine, on my work Windows computer,
Right.
it makes errors. All of these things make errors. I have a version of a summarize feature that was built into PDF Expert on my iPad. It's a flaw. The fact that it works
Hmm.
at all is impressive. But the thing is, you
Good point.
can't trust it. And so the article in The Atlantic talks about using this for summarizing messages. I, in my post, talked about using it for summarizing emails, but it's the same underlying technology. Yeah, and likewise, Apple linked to a commercial with what's the actress's name? Is it Bella Ramsey, the one that was from The Last of Us?
Yes, I
They
believe
have
so.
this silly
Yes.
commercial where she's talking to somebody who's giving her a pitch for a movie, and she looks at her iPhone, and because she hasn't read the email yet, and she does a quick summary of it. She goes, "Oh yeah," then she just reads the summary, so as if she doesn't need to read the email. But the reality is, you do need to read the email, and notwithstanding
Yeah.
what Bella Ramsey did in the commercial, you will look like an idiot if you rely upon the summary because it's just not complete. It's pretty good, and maybe 60% of the time it's going to be accurate. I'm just making
Hmm.
that number up based on my own personal experience. But a huge percentage of the time, maybe not half, but a huge percentage of the time, it's going to miss details. Now, that doesn't mean that it's useless.
Yes,
If you
exactly.
pull up a document, what I've done before is there have been times where I've used this type of technology, and I have a bunch of documents that I'm familiar with, and I might pull up that one document, use the summarize feature, and like, oh, now I see this is the document of such and such. I'm not
Yeah,
relying
yeah,
upon
yeah.
that to be a comprehensive summary. It's
Good
just like a
point.
quick little
Yeah.
flat, what's this one about? But if you were trying to substitute reading your messages, reading your emails, reading your documents for relying
Hmm.
upon an AI summary, the technology is not there yet. But that doesn't mean it's not impressive. I mean, it's something that we didn't have access to at all before about a year or two ago. And it's going to continue to get so much better in the future. And maybe we will have a day where you can rely upon your summary. But I just want people to it's a cool feature. It's right there in your face. It's easy to access. At the very top, you see the little button, or Siri automatically tries to
Right.
summarize it for you. Just be wary of it because it really is often not accurate.
I have high hopes that this is just the beginning stages and it will
Hmm.
get better. It will continue to get better. Certainly as Apple gathers into, data on this and frankly, I mean, they're reading the same stories that we're reading, Jeff,
Agreed.
right? And so
Exactly.
they
Exactly.
understand all of this. And then, to get it back to the text messages, to put this in context, first of all, I'm thinking, well, text messages by themselves are typically shortened bits of communication already, right? As opposed to an email or a document. And so summarizing already what is a shortened bit of communication, it can't be that easy. Like when I really step back and think about this, I can see where this is going wrong. I love how the author Lila Shroff here starts off this story. She woke up one morning, checked her phone, and there was a summary text saying obituary shared. But it was from her friend. And so she talks about she woke, she immediately like woke up. It was like nervous. I'm like, oh my goodness, is this an obituary from my friend? And it turns out it was a relative of her friend's, right? That it was an
Hmm.
obituary that he had forwarded or something like that. But I don't know what the message was. Maybe she goes in and talks about that. But the point that I'm saying is like, hey, my aunt died or something like that, right? And here's the obituary. How do you shorten that? How do you
Yeah.
get that down to something that is going to be summarized? And so, looking through this past week, because there's been a ton of, I mean, there's even like a Reddit thread, I think, where people are collecting all of these crazy things. And
Yeah.
there was,
Some of them are funny. Yeah.
the one headliner was one where, a girlfriend broke up or, one person broke up with another over texting, and it just really was, terrible. Anyway, it's just these things like, I look at this and I see all these headlines this past week, and I have to believe that it's going to get better. And it's just, but the pain point right now for me is something that you started off with, Jeff, is we can't trust it right now, right? Even if I see a summary, I'm still going to look at the summary, read the summary, and then I'm going to tap into it to read the entire communication. So in that in that context, that's not saving me any time. Like, I'm not seeing the benefit of the summary if I'm still going to go into that, other than what you kind of alluded to, is that it might be good just to get a general idea, but I don't trust it yet. And that to me is the hurting point.
In fact, it may even waste your time, because if you read the summary
Yeah,
and think that it's
exactly.
going to say X, but then the actual message says Y, it may take you a little bit longer than it normally would have taken you to understand the Y, because you
Exactly.
still have the X in
Yep.
your head. But anyway, okay.
Exactly. Well, that's not the only thing people are griping about with 18.1. This was another great story you linked to about iOS 18 Photos app. We talked about this quite a bit. It's taken me a while to get familiar with it. I feel like I haven't run up against anything that is distasteful for me or frustrating, but there have been a few times where I'm like, it's like, okay, wait, I just want this album, and I had to scroll a little bit more. I haven't taken the time, to be fair, I haven't taken the time to customize all of that. And I feel like that, if somebody like me hasn't taken the time, then I know that my mom hasn't, right? Or most people that would be using this phone. But there's some other gripes in here about this Photos redesign. And again, I know Apple's been listening to this. I think overall this is a good move, but you still got some people belly aching about it.
Yeah. The big thing is that it used to be, and for so many years, that when you opened up the Photos app, you immediately saw the grid of, all the little pictures and stuff like
Right.
that from the top to the bottom of your screen. And then Apple changed it this summer so that when you open it up, you still see that at the top half of the screen, but the bottom half of the screen is devoted to albums and collections and other things and
Recent
stuff that
days,
you used to have
people.
to dig
Yeah.
into before. And people are like, I want my whole screen to show this, not just the half of it. And gosh, I remember right after Apple released the first beta version of this summer, we saw some articles from people like Federico Viticci over in Italy, and he's like, I hate it, I
Right.
hate it, I hate it. And then months later, he came back and said, oh no, I gotten used to it, and now I actually like it. And so I feel
Right.
like so many people have gone through the transition, and depending upon how frequently you use the Photos app, plus depending upon your personal preferences, that's going to control, have you gotten used to it and actually appreciate it, or are you still thinking, why in the
Right.
world did they change something that wasn't broken?
Right.
I will
Right.
tell you
Right.
that the reason that I like it is because the collections part at the bottom actually is useful. More often than not, I
Yeah.
may
Yeah.
think that I just want to scroll through my recent photos, but the reality is that maybe by using the recent days tab, or maybe by looking at an album, or by looking at one of those other ways of getting at information, that's actually a better one for me to use if I really took the
Mm-hmm.
time to think about it. Plus, from a discoverability standpoint, I like the fact that it puts these other things down there, because I may forget, oh yeah, I could use the Photos app and I could just instantly see pictures associated with the trip to France or whatever.
Right.
And I
Right.
may not even think about looking at those pictures. And then suddenly I'm looking at the pictures and a smile comes to my face because there's some cool stuff in there. So when it comes to just serendipity, I like having this stuff more in front of you. The perfect example is when I realize very few people have the Apple Vision Pro, but when I wear my Apple Vision Pro and I open the Photos app, one of the things it has at the top is Apple automatically goes through and takes some of my older pictures and
Yeah.
applies the spatialization effect to it, which basically takes a
Oh
2D
yeah.
picture and makes it 3D. And I'm always delighted by, oh yeah, let me see the pictures that they picked out, because they tend to pick out the ones
Yeah.
that the
Exactly.
tricks going to really work on. And I look at these pictures of my kids when they were really young, or maybe even older pictures from the
Yeah.
1980s
Yeah.
or 1990s. And when you look at that same old picture in a 3D version, it feels more realistic. You feel like you're there, and
Yeah.
it just
Yeah.
gives you those happy feelings in your brain. So I do like that Apple is trying to bring to the forefront these things. It does enhance my overall enjoyment that I get from the Photos app, but I will not deny that it is a change.
It's a
In fact, I
change.
have
That's
one little
right.
tip that I'll think about. In the old version, this is something that I've noticed. In the old version of Photos, if you were, you open up the app and you can just see the little thumbnails, right? And you
Right.
scroll through, let's say you maybe scroll back a couple of months. If you want to scroll to your oldest picture, you can tap at the top of the screen. It'll scroll all the way up to your oldest picture. And
Sure.
it used to be that if you want to scroll to your newest picture, you could just tap on the little icon at the bottom for the bottom left icon, and you could scroll back to like your current
Yeah.
picture. That
Right.
option is gone now with the current screen. But
Oh
if
yeah.
I
I
find
see.
myself months ago, years ago, and I want to scroll all the way down again, here's what I do. You know how at the very bottom, when you're looking at all these thumbnails, it says years, months, all. If you
Yep.
tap the word
I'm there.
years, which just looks at
Yep.
your pictures by years, it only takes you a second to flick up from years to go all the way
Oh
to the bottom. So
yeah.
do that. And then
Ooh.
now if you flip the opposite direction again, you're no longer in the years mode.
You're
You're
in
back in the
tiles.
thumbnails.
Yeah.
So that's my little
Thumbnails. Yeah,
tip.
yeah, yeah.
If you're
Oh,
if you're
good
somewhere
one.
in your collection and you want to jump to the current stuff, go to years, flip down, and then flip back up again, and you'll be current. So, but that's an example of a feature that used to be there and people knew how to get to it.
Yeah.
Now you can do
Right,
something
right,
similar.
right.
So you need to learn these new tricks, but once you do, I think it's better. But to get back to the article that started this, as he's pointing out, I believe correctly, there truly is, some people are complaining, some people are saying they love it. And everybody has a right to their opinion. You may disagree with me. You may say, Jeff, I've spent lots of time with it and I hate it even more. And that's, so be it. But I do see why Apple did what they did.
Apple is messing with probably two of the most used apps on the iPhone, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I don't know if I've seen any numbers specifically on this, but I just going by anecdotal evidence and hearing so many. I mean, we know Photos is probably what the vast majority of people are using on their iPhone almost every day. We know that Messages is something that people are using every day.
Yeah.
It's not the phone. You're not using it as a phone. The point that I'm getting to is these, I think overall, I think all of these changes are good, and like like we're saying, like people will get used to them and probably end up liking them at some point. But it's change, just like anything else, right? And if it's change on something that you're familiar with and used to, then that's going to take a little bit longer to get through. But interesting stuff. Staying on the Photos app real quick. Now, this is all in 18.1 that we've been talking about, but you linked to a story from David Sparks this week about 18.2 beta. We have referenced that in 18.2, Apple is going to come out with some additional tools for images and photos. And one that David is talking about is Apple's Image Playground. This is where you can basically generate an image, right? So that's similar to what ChatGPT and DALL-E and some of these other systems have been doing from generative AI. Those tools basically let you do whatever you want to do. David is here talking about the guardrails that have been put up in Apple's Image Playground, which I just have really found interesting on this.
Yeah. I mean, when the first versions of this came out, like you say, through DALL-E and the original ones, they were interesting because you could basically create whatever kind of picture you wanted, and that included pretty realistic looking pictures, although sometimes if you looked closely, you could see things that didn't make sense in them.
Right.
But it was very easy to make realistic photographs that are essentially deep fakes. I mean, it looks like this is, so-and-so, some famous person doing something, but it was actually a fake image. And so Apple has obviously been very conscious of this. On the one hand, they like the idea of people making whatever image you want, because let's say you're putting together like a presentation and you're like, gosh, I really wish I had a picture of, a person holding, I don't even know, a teapot, because that's appropriate for my slide. You could either go and how would you find that picture? It would take you forever to find it, or
Long time.
You could just tell the thing, this is what I want, and it would make you a picture. So Apple sees the utility of being able to create images, whatever you want. Let's put aside for the second the fact that if you make your living by being an artist that creates these for people, you may not be thrilled about
that
this.
little thing.
But again, most people are not going to take the time to hire an artist for just a silly little image, and so it's not really costing them any money. But so it's a great idea. But Apple wants to have guardrails. They don't want things that look realistic because they don't want the problem of deepfakes. They don't want things that are any problematic subjects. So with this Image Playground app, if you say, make me a picture of such and such, it will not let you do any bad words or things that it may find offensive. It just does not let you do. David Sparks points out that it even doesn't let you do things that Apple thinks are protected by copyright, including their own items. So when he said that I wanted to have a picture of a guy and a Mac Mini, the app says I can't make a picture of a Mac Mini. It's like, come on. I mean, if you just want to have somebody holding an iPhone and they're like, iPhone is a registered trademark of Apple Incorporated, I will not generate an image of it. I say, come on. So maybe if you just use the word smartphone or something, it would do it instead.
Right.
David is making fun of it in this post because the guardrails are pretty severe. And as he says at the end, so much so that they may even limit usefulness. Well, perhaps, but I know, considering what trouble you can get into by creating these images, I think it is totally appropriate for Apple to say in their first out of the gate version of Image Playground, which we're going to see in just a few weeks, we're going to make it really safe, and we're going to be pretty sure about it, and maybe over time they'll loosen it up and do more with it and stuff like that. We shall see. Especially one thing I'll mention is one thing that Image Playground can do is it can take an image of a person that's in your Photos app. So if I go to my Photos app and you, for example, Brett, are one of the people on my Photos app, so I could say, you know who Brett Burney is because I've got pictures tagged of him in Photos. I want you to make Brett Burney, holding or get Brett Burney in a red car. It will do that, and it will make a cartoonish, almost like a Pixar-like version of you based upon pictures. And I've seen this in the beta. The way it works is it generates a couple of them. So like you can have 5 or 6 to choose from. Some of them will not even look like you at all. I've seen some of myself, and I'm like, seriously, that's just ridiculous. But 1 or 2 of them might be sort of close. And then, you have your silly picture of Brett Burney in a red car that you could, send it in a text message or whatever. But again, the idea of you're using a real person, Apple does not want, again, they want to have serious guardrails. They want it to be perfectly clear that this is just a pretend image. It's not, a deep fake. So they're being careful.
To your point, I remember several weeks ago, Apple has been thinking about this for quite a while. We had that interview from Joanna Stern, right, at the Wall Street Journal with Craig Federighi.
Exactly.
And where, she was trying to push him a little bit, like, how are you dealing with this? And I felt like he did a pretty good job of dancing around it a little bit. But the takeaway was, we have been thinking about this. We're really nervous about this. Maybe that's not the right word, but they've really they're being very considerate about this and putting some guardrails around. David links to this other story in 9 to 5 Mac from Ryan Crhistoffel, which I thought was really good. Ryan actually lists the three guardrails is sort of what we're calling this, that at least Apple is putting out here. Non-realistic styles, going to what you're talking about. It's like the cartoonish aspect on this. No recognized intellectual property, right? So you can't, like you said, create an image of Mickey Mouse or Darth Vader or something like that. And there's going to be a wait list on here, which I don't know too much about. Let me see how long ago this story was. Well, it was just maybe this past week or within the past week here. So there might be, it may not be for everybody when it's rolling out immediately on this, but we know because we've seen lots of this stuff. We know people are going to push the boundaries on this, right? And they're going to come up with some of the silliest things that they can possibly come up, and that's great because I think that's what Apple does when they put some of this out. But I'm a little torn on this for some of the reasons you've already discussed. But I think I do overall like the idea that Apple is doing a slow roll on this, at least, and putting some of these guardrails around. They're going to wait and see how people are using it. And then ultimately they can build on that and probably add a few more things on this. I like how David says this here. Apple is not aiming to revolutionize AI image generation. Rather, they're working to provide a safe, controlled, creative tool for their users. And that's great, right?
Perfect summary.
And we're going to be able to see that. You can see some of the differences there, but I like this, and I like the idea just when you were talking about, if I want to create a slide presentation, I may want a very specific image of a city skyline with a helicopter over on one side. And the fact that I might be able to do that, even within like Keynote, for example, that would be pretty powerful, and that's where a lot of this is going. I know people already do that with some other tools and everything, but having that built in will be pretty cool on that. One last thing I wanted to mention that you linked to today from iOS 18.1. Well, actually, more specifically, this is tvOS 18.1. If you have one of the new Apple TV 4Ks, you might want to make sure that you have turned on enhanced dialogue. I'm going to do this tonight. Stephanie and I, my wife and I, want to sit down and watch something tonight, and I want to make sure that this is turned on. We have a 4K Apple TV, but I don't know if I've had this turned on because it's been available for HomePod components, but now you can get this even within the Apple TV.
Yeah. So the Apple TV 4K, it's the current version of it. I was just looking back. It came out in October 2022, I think is the Apple press release. So if you've purchased an Apple TV within the past couple of years, this may be the version that you have. If you have an older Apple TV, maybe you don't. But this is the current one. And like you say, it's the one that has 4K. This feature called Enhanced Dialogue, it actually came out. It came out with the old version, tvOS 17, so it's been out for a year, but it only worked in the past if your HomePod was your speaker for your Apple TV, which I know some people use, but that's not what I have. I mean, at my house, I have a surround, a 5.1 system with speakers in the front and the back that I've had for, gosh, I don't even know how long, 15, 20 years, a long, maybe not quite that long, but a long time. I've had this speaker
Right.
system, and I just use it with an amplifier and with my television. And so what Apple has done recently, and again, I did not know about it, so I'm glad that this article came out, is you can now use the enhanced dialogue feature no matter what speakers you use, as long as you have the current version of the Apple TV. And again, what this does is it can soften some of the surrounding sounds and boost the sound of people speaking, just so that it's easier to understand in the shows that you're watching, so that it's easier for you to understand the dialogue. And the special effects and the other sounds are not quite as loud. It's just an alternative way. I agree, Brett. I haven't tried this yet, and I was going to do the same thing as you. I was going to try this either this weekend or next weekend, just to see, do I prefer it this way? Do I not prefer it this way? So it's something to try out, and I'll be curious to see what people think about it.
Well, yeah, this is also from Ryan Crhistoffel in 9 to 5 Mac. And I like how he goes, I live in an apartment and have a baby who sleeps one room away from the living room where he has his Apple TV 4K. That means he has to be mindful of the TV's volume at all times. So that's how he's using this. Enhanced dialogue means I can keep the volume at a lower level without missing out on any of the dialogue. But, in some cases, we talked about some of this, just the way that even modern day television shows and movies are sort of like mixed from an audio standpoint. Sometimes it's hard. I mean, there's a reason why I know both my kids and your kids, Jeff, they prefer to have like the closed captions on. And it's just been sort of a different mindset for my wife and I to be like, wait, why are we watching it with, from our generation? It feels like that was something that we just didn't do, but they insist on having that on. And I think that is a little bit, to some extent, that's a reflection of like, hey, the way that things are mixed, from an audio perspective there. But I'm glad to do this. We're going to try this out. Maybe we can report back in the next couple of weeks on that.
One more quick thing about this article, Brett, is, and Ryan mentions it, there's another feature that's actually not new. It's been there for a while, but in the Apple TV in settings, there's something called reduce loud sounds. And so if you don't like it when you're watching a show and suddenly something explodes and it's really, really loud,
right?
This is a setting that you can turn on that it will specifically dampen just those loud sounds. So that way you don't have unexpected circumstances in which the TV is a lot louder than you anticipated. Now, again, it's going to, perhaps that would affect your viewing experience because you want your explosions to be loud. But, if there's other people in the house, this is another thing that you can use. And again, this is not a new feature. It's been there before. I don't have it turned on myself. Maybe I should. Maybe if I ask the other people in my house, they'd say like, reduce those loud sounds right now. But anyway, so that's another feature to keep in mind.
Quick bonus tip on this, because my daughter was home with her. She has the AirPods Max, and she was sitting on the couch after she had to have her wisdom teeth taken out. But she's watching movies, but not all of us want to see the movies, right? We're all around.
Right.
I forget about this often, but even if you have the AirPods Pro or the AirPods Max, you can via Bluetooth connect those devices to the Apple TV. And I got to tell you, of course, this is only if you're watching it solo. I don't think you can attach multiple. I don't think that's possible.
I don't think so.
But I got to tell you, when I do that, that is like some of the best sound experience that I have when watching the television show. So just letting people know, it's really easy. And I'm surprised at how well that works. The wireless and the Bluetooth. If you have Apple AirPods Pro, or if you have the AirPods Max, you can connect those to your Apple TV. And that's an excellent way to watch and still be able to enjoy the whole thing. The only downside to that is that, like, I do noise cancellation, and so if actually somebody in real life comes and taps me on the shoulder or something, I'm just like, I flip out because it's like I can't hear them coming. It's a lot of fun. All right, let's move from 8.2.1, all these updates and everything that we've been talking about, to something a little bit more fun, and actually something that we know at least 60% of our listeners today, thank you very much, are going to be interested in. The Overcast app, which is a podcast app that has been around for a very long time, that is still supported by a one-man band that does the development on there. And man, there are some really nifty, well, I would just say some really nifty one or two improvements that he has made over this past week. Well worth even the slight incremental price update that he's charging on this as well.
Yeah, that one-man band, of course, is Marco Arment, also known from the Accidental Tech podcast. Marco has been a software developer for a long time, created all sorts of apps over the last 20 years. But when he created Overcast, over a decade ago, when it first came out, it was a podcast player that did two things really well. It had this unique, at the time, feature that it could remove the space in podcasts. And so if you had long pauses or even short pauses in a podcast, but you wanted to speed up your listening, his app would take away those little pauses between words. Anyone listening to Overcast did not hear the fact that I just paused. And
Nice.
you might
Well
not think that removing those pauses makes a difference, but it does. I mean, there's enough pauses throughout an average podcast
big difference.
that it may reduce it by, you could listen to the same podcast in 10 or 15 minutes. Of course, you can also increase the speed of people, which I do on all of my podcasts. I know that I'm a fast talker, so I'm a bad person to have my voice speed increased too much. But and he also had a great algorithm for enhancing the sound and making podcasts. Talk about enhanced dialogue for making podcasts more or less. So those marquee features from day one are the reason that so many people like to Overcast. And you can use Overcast for free and take advantage of those features. But he has added some extra features over time for people that pay for it, like removing ads. And this week, he's added a couple features. I mean, again, they're not necessary, but I think that they're really nice additions that, as we're going to talk about in a second, they're just for people that pay for it. But let me just describe the features first. One of them is called, and this one is, I think, so nice. It's a 48-hour history and undo. So what this means is, if you've ever been listening to a podcast and then maybe you accidentally hit the button or something like that, and next thing you know, you're only halfway through the podcast, and maybe you hit the button and you jump to the end of it, or maybe you fell asleep, you were listening to it at night, and so it just ran the rest of it. And the next thing you know, the podcast is over, and you're like, oh, now I'm not done listening to it. I got to go re-download it, find it again, figure out where I was, blah, blah, blah.
Been there.
This doesn't happen to me often, but when it does happen, and it happens probably once a month.
Very frustrating.
Like, oh. So now he has this undo feature that, again, you can return, and I haven't tried it yet because it just came out this week, but you can apparently go back to where you were anytime in the last 48 hours, and you can bring yourself right back to where you were so that you don't have to do all, you can find that podcast again, you can find the specific episode. Oh, the next time I need this, it's going to be a lifesaver for me. I can't wait to use it. So that's one cool feature. And then the other cool feature is called listening stats, which is just, if you're curious, what have been the big podcasts you've listened to, you can go back to 2023. Apparently the app has been tracking this. And so all you do is, and when I opened up Overcast, you just, when you're in the Overcast app, on the main screen of it, at the very top left, there is the icon with, it looks like a gear, which brings up settings. If I tap on that, you'll see an option about 5 down called listening stats. And it tells me, in calendar year 2024, or I could go back and make it 2023, how many hours and minutes did I spend listening to what podcast? And it's interesting because I actually, if I had to guess, I would have said for me that my number one listen to would have probably been a podcast that I love called Upgrade, which comes out every Monday. It's Jason Snell and Mike Hurley. It actually turns out that was number 2 on my list. I only, quote unquote, I only spent 60 hours listening to that one. But in 2024, I've spent 68 hours listening to Mac Break Weekly, another podcast that I love.
Fantastic.
But it's fun to just look back. And again, this is just based upon hours. And so, of course, a really long podcast that you listen to all the way through is going to show up higher on the top, and a really short podcast. Having said that, one of the podcasts that I regularly listen to is a podcast I pay for called Dithering, which is John Gruber and who's the guy from Mr. Techery. They have a nice podcast. It comes out twice. It comes out twice a week, and it's only 15 minutes. So I cannot listen to Dithering for more than 30 minutes total, and yet it's on my top 10 list of podcasts. So it's a fun way, and hopefully for all of you listening, hopefully this podcast is in your top 10. But it's sort of fun, to look back and say, what podcast did I listen to the most this year? Again, do you need this feature? No, but it's a cool feature. And one fun thing about it is, in addition to looking at your list, he has a tab at the top called Image to Share, and if you actually tap on that, it creates something that is ready for Instagram, ready for a message. It's a nice little graphic that includes it if you just want to share with somebody else. Hey, look at my top podcast. And I think Marco's idea is that people will share it on social media, and other people will share theirs, and it gets just people talking about podcasts they like and share. So it's a fun little feature. Do you need it? No, but it's nice to have. The main reason that I pay for Overcast is I use it so much. In fact, I was
Right.
surprised to see how many hours I listened to podcasts this past year, quite a few. I use it so much that I want to support the developer so that he continues to bring out new features. I mean, I learned that I have in the calendar year 2024, I have listened to podcasts for 313 hours, which is a lot. I mean, that's almost like 7 hours a week. I did not quite realize that, but I guess when you add up going to work, coming back from work, while I'm doing dishes,
Sure.
all the times that I
Right.
listen to
Right.
podcasts, on the weekend, it adds up to be quite a bit. So it's a fun feature. He just raised the price for Overcast. It used to be $10 a year. Now it's $15 a year, but you have all these new features. So that's what's in the Overcast. Those are the new features. But as you and I were just discovering, Brett, a lot of people
Yes.
don't pay for Overcast, including, for example, maybe you.
There is. So first of all, I just want to say thanks for sharing your little snapshot there with me via text message, because it is fun to see that. And I do like the fact that we can share that. And, you just pointed out that you can share that little recap. This is a perfect time. Marco's brilliant, right, in doing it, because it's the end of the year, right? And so we'll probably see several of these being posted at the end of the year. But yes, womp womp for me, because you're talking all about these great features and updates. I have been using Overcast for years, at least since 2015, and I'll tell you why I know that in just a moment, because I have not yet updated on this. So first of all, let's just go back and say Overcast, Marco allows you to use Overcast for completely for free, right? And so there might be a large percentage of people out there using it, but if you do that, you will see ads, right? That's how he supports the free version, and there will be ads. Right. And I haven't seen them in a long time. But I think when I've seen screenshots, they're very minimal, right? They're kind of at the bottom.
Yeah, they're just little banner ads, right?
Yeah, they just and they just go in, but they've been nice. So you can still continue to use it for free. Now, back in January of 2015, apparently I was using the free version of Overcast, but I paid $4.99 in January 20th of 2015 to unlock the ability to turn off banner ads. And so that's what I paid all those years ago. I have been using Overcast very happily, extremely happily, I would say, almost every day. I don't know what my numbers are yet, because in order to get access to that, I actually have to upgrade to Overcast Premium. And I'm just going to say, in the story that you linked to today, this is from Chance Miller at 9 to 5 Mac. He says at the bottom here, he has always thought that the previous subscription price of $9.99 per year was too generous. And so he is happy to pay the slight increase, which is now $14.99 per year. I will absolutely pay that and do that right after we finish this podcast today. Because then that means I will get access to all of these other features. And of course, just being able to see all these features over the year, to continue to see, Marco, how he has continued to update and add amazing features in the podcast world here. I mean, and we just know from even our own stats that so many of you are using Overcast, and it's just a great way to also support Marco in the fact that he does this. I mean, there's not too many single individual developers out there that are doing this, and it's just great. And can I just say real quick, one last thing? You were doing that pause, and we were talking about what he calls the smart speed tool on there. You don't understand how amazing that is until you go to a different app, Jeff, like the Apple Podcast app, yes, or another app, and you listen to a podcast and you're like, why is everybody going so slow on this? And it's like, that's why, to me, I cannot listen to podcasts in any other app anymore. I have to do Overcast because I'm so dependent upon that. But I love it. Like, I've gotten used to it, and it's just a way that a beautiful way that I can input and ingest a lot of information throughout the week. And soon I'll find out how much time that I spend on that.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you're upgrading, because I think that you'll enjoy the new features. But again,
absolutely.
The fact that you paid $5 almost a decade ago, and Marco has continued, that just shows you that he has not been squeezing users for money. He still makes most of the cool features available for free, and you have to see banner ads, but whatever, banner ads are not that big of a deal. I love that he has that option, but if you want to pay something to him, you can, and you get some good stuff if you do. It's nice.
So
and again,
worth it.
Companies from huge, apps from huge companies that have a lot more money and have investors, and they got to pay off their investors. They can't do stuff like this. Little indie developer apps, Overcast, and there's other examples like this.
So great.
They're so great. I hope that they continue to be a big part of the iPhone experience.
Thank you, Marco. Keep going another 10 years and beyond. Love this. Okay. I know we've been spending some time on this, but you, my friend Jeff, had some really nice links today to the season of the year of Black Friday. I've been seeing a lot of these things come, bubbling up. We had Apple just, a few weeks ago announced the new MacBooks and the new Mac Minis. And, a lot of those things that are new. Of course, we have the iPhone 16 and the Pro. Amazon, along with several other stores, are jumping on the Black Friday wagon. It's almost like a Black Week, right? It's not even Friday anymore, and we don't even have Cyber Monday. I mean, it's just kind of being so expanded now. But anyway, what few things would you like to highlight today that you talked about in your Black Friday links?
Well, let me begin by saying that there are lots of websites out there that seek to be the resource for Black Friday, and they really go out there and look for deals. That's not me. That's not my intention. But I had started by saying, oh, this is a good deal. Let me mention this. And as I dug deeper, Amazon actually has so many good deals. I'm like, wow, you should look at this. And so whether you're looking, to get something for yourself or you're looking for a good present, you can't ignore when you have these devices that you can save, $70, $80, $90 on something that's a few $100s. A perfect example is the Apple Watch Series 10, which just came out, right? I mean, I just got it in September. It's still very, very new. And, you can get the entry level one is only $330, $329, which is a nice saving from the normal one is $70 higher. So if you weren't sure if you were going to splurge and get the Series 10 or give somebody a cheaper version like an old Series 9 that you find or even the Apple Watch SE, when you have a nice discount like this, almost a 20% discount, it's a reason to get the Series 10. So that was one that was really good. And of course, if you want to go with this SE, the really inexpensive version of an Apple Watch, which is the version, for example, when my wife and I gave my daughter her first Apple Watch, which she continues to use today, we just got her an SE, which that's all she needs, just the basic features. And you can now get it for $80 off for only $179.
Whoa.
I mean, $169, excuse me.
That's
a really
incredible
cheap price. And this gives you the ability that, they have an Apple Watch, maybe it's for your grandparent and you want them to have something on your wrist so that if they fall down, it'll detect it and it'll send you an alert. Plus, it gives them the ability to see the time and to get some alerts on their watch. And it's only $169. I mean, that's a pretty good deal. So those are nice details. Another one that's really good is the AirPods Pro, which, we use and talk about all the time. They just added the ability in the Pro 2 to have the hearing
test.
The hearing test and to use it as a hearing aid. The biggest discount that I've ever seen anywhere is right now. I mean, these usually cost $260 and they're currently they usually cost $250 and they're now $160. So it's a $90 discount or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think it's gone up just a little bit though. It's now $169.
But
I've been watching this past week just like you have. It's been going up and down. It's been bouncing up and down. So it's worth watching if you're looking for something on here. Well, it's $169 now instead of $159 what you posted this morning.
And I double checked it earlier this morning and it was $159. So I mean that's only a $10 change, but keep an eye on it. I mean, Amazon does fluctuate their prices, especially these. Even the $169 though is basically a third off for the top of the line AirPods.
Hello.
It's just such a great price, such a great price. And there's some other ones I have listed too, iPads you can save money on, other things. But, these, especially for these, the Apple Watches and the AirPods, these are really great prices. So now keep in mind, as I put out my post, you may not get the generous return policy. Amazon does, they do have some return things where you can wait a little bit later. You have to research and see if it applies to these. The advantage of buying from the Apple Store is although you won't get this much of a discount, you do have the ability to return it on January 8th. So that's a long time from now. So if you think that you might want to return it or if the person might want to exchange it for a different model, then you might want to go to the Apple Store. And keep in mind that for Black Friday, a week from today, the day after Thanksgiving, Apple is going to have all of these. The way that they do it is they don't give you a discount like Amazon, but what they do is when you purchase a product, they give you an Apple gift card for, $25, $50, $75, $100, all the way up to $200, depending upon what the product is and how much you spend. And so it's functionally the same thing. I mean, it's a card that you'll use on your next Apple purchase, and I'm sure all of us will have a next Apple purchase. So so that's the way that Apple takes care of it. But whether you take advantage of the Amazon price or the Apple gift card, this is a great time to buy Apple products for the holidays. Great time.
Good. Including to that return policy, just quickly, I always add to the point that if you have an Apple credit card, I mean, one of the reasons that I don't do a lot of Apple product purchases from Amazon is because I like to put those purchases on my Apple credit card, which allows you to basically do 12 months of, payment with no interest on there. And so anyway,
Plus
just
you
another
get 3%
consideration.
back too, which is nice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You got it. And so for me, I've even done that. I've done that buying those gift cards, just like you said. And it's really confusing how Apple does this. They actually take off, like if they give you $100 gift card, they take that price off of the product, but you're still paying for the gift card. People get very confused in the way Apple has done this. I don't know why they continue to do it, a little confusing, but I've done it several times once I'm, comfortable with how to figure it out. But not only do we get that discount, but I also get the 3% back and I get the 12%. So anyway, it is the season, so just be aware that some of those sales, and thank you for listing some of those, because man, now I might have to go get an Apple Watch, an extra Apple Watch on some of that. Those prices are just amazing. Congratulations to Billie Eilish, who is Apple Music's Artist of the Year, like again, right? The second time. She is Artist of the Year for 2024, and I think this is great. I remember we love to talk about this at the end of each year, that Apple comes out with some of these awards. Billie Eilish is having a pretty amazing year already. I think she just won another Academy Award or something like that, on a Grammy Award here. Yeah, just crazy stuff, which is great.
Yeah, I always love it when there's an artist out there that my teenage daughter listens to, and I also like, because I feel like those.
You know what?
Those
I'm in the same boat. Yeah,
exactly. There's not always overlap in listening taste, because I'm much more listening to 70s and 80s music than the modern stuff. But yeah, Apple, this is not just based upon downloads. I'm sure Apple takes that into account, but the editorial team behind Apple Music, they actually look at all the artists and they decide who they're going to give the awards to, and they have all sorts of lists of top things and stuff. But the first time that Apple came out with these awards in 2019, she won, and now here we are 5 years later, and she has won again. So congrats to her. And if you look at the picture that's in the Apple press release, which you were showing a second ago, the actual physical award that they give to the
what
artist.
is that again?
So that's the chip. That's the full chip, the silicon chip, which is huge. It's like the size of a record, which is why Apple does it. And this is what the factory will use to cut out all of the little M3, M4, all of the little Apple processors. But they first make it in a huge thing, and then they cut it up and they put it in. So this is, I don't know how many individual processors are reflected in what she's holding in her hand there, but it is definitely a distinctive looking award. This does not look like a Grammy.
Beautiful.
Does not look like anything else. You'll recognize this award.
Speaking of music, Apple is doubling down on this today. They announced something pretty amazing, Shazam, which Apple purchased. When did they purchase? Just several years ago now. But it's still continued to be like a sort of a separate app, which I now use it as a widget. I know it's kind of built into Siri and everything else, but Shazam hits 100 billion song recognitions. That is 12 songs identified for every person on Earth. Yeah, that's amazing, Jeff.
Shazam started in 2002. Apple purchased it in 2018. And the funny thing is, when it started in 2002, gosh, over 20 years ago, it was such a different. I mean, it's the same idea, but the way they implemented it is you would call something on your phone, and you would hold up your phone,
like an actual phone call,
like an actual physical phone call, and it would listen using the phone speaker, and then it would send you a text message when it identifies it. But the underlying technology of, like, they take all the songs in existence that they know about, they create an audio fingerprint so that they could just listen to a few seconds of that song and figure out what it is. It is really one. I mean, we've all used Shazam, and it feels like magic. I mean, it really does. How could my iPhone know in a few seconds exactly what the song is, show it to me in the Apple Music app or in Spotify or whatever you use, and therefore you can listen to the full song. So many times I use this. I mean, the number one use for me is when I'm watching a TV show and there's like something in the closing credits or in the show. I'm like, wow, that's a great song. I want to hear the whole thing. I just hold up my phone, or I ask, who is this, who wrote, what is the song I'm listening to, and it starts listening. So Shazam is a great service. I love that Apple purchased them because they have been a great steward for the service.
Oh yeah.
And I know that all of the engineers behind Shazam are just super smart music people. And it's like I pointed out in my post, Shazam itself is fantastic. These people are so smart, and I think that when you combine what Shazam does and factor into it Apple Intelligence in this new world of algorithms and stuff like that, it's going to be even more important. So that's cool. But back to this post, 100 billion it's hard to even understand how big 100 billion is. And so Apple
Right.
in this press release helps you, because in the first few bullet points of the press release, they point out that that is equivalent to what, 12
12
songs
songs
for
identified.
every person on Earth. I mean, they say you would have to use Shazam to identify a song every second for over 3,000 years to get to 100 billion. 100 billion is a huge number. It's
That's
so
great.
huge that I can't even understand how huge it is. So kudos to the folks at Shazam.
Just to your point about how this is so integrated now into my life. I mean, first of all, this still just continues to blow my mind every time that I use it. Like, are you kidding me? In the past, I would hear a song and I would have to like try to go and remember it, sing it to somebody, and hopefully that they would recognize it. But I have it now on all of my lock screens. On my lock screens, Jeff, I now have the Shazam widget there because I use it that often, and I want it to be that quick. Instead of having to unlock my phone, go find the Shazam app and tap the button, I have it as a lock screen widget now. In fact, when we came down to New Orleans, I remember I was walking through the Roosevelt Hotel, and they have fantastic music, like New Orleans music that playing, and I'm like, I always want to know who it is. Like, what is the artist? What's the band? Is it something that I want to get? I just love the feel of it, and so boom, I tap Shazam, and it comes right up. And yeah, I constantly have it on there. Let's talk about something else that people use quite a bit, apparently, is Apple's Notes app. I like this story from the Wall Street Journal you linked to. When did Apple Notes app become an extension of our brains? I'm going to guess kind of like you, Jeff. I mean, this is basically our collective brain in my family. My kids are constantly gathering stuff. If they want to take a note or capture some kind of an idea or a task, they put it in, and then we start sharing notes amongst ourselves. Whether it's shopping lists, like we used to use different apps for a lot of this, but today we pretty much put everything into Apple Notes, whether for individuals or for sharing as well.
Yeah, great way to share your Christmas list with somebody else or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, what the Notes app is useful for so many different reasons, but this article points out, and it's, for me, it's always been the key reason. It's an extension of your brain.
Yeah.
Some people
Yeah.
have photographic memories, and for those people, thumbs
Not
up to
me.
you. I am
Yeah.
not one of those people. And so if I hear something and I'm like, gosh, I want to make sure I remember it, it's just so quick to jot it down in the Notes app. And then I can forget about it. And whether I need it 6 hours later or 6 months later, I know that I can just search for it and it's in there. And so it's just
Boom.
such a great way to jot those things down. And so I have thought about the Notes app this way. Apparently, I'm not the only one, since the Wall Street Journal
Right.
article does too. It's just, oh, I love the Notes app.
Plus it syncs, right? I mean, we almost
Yeah.
take this for granted today with so many apps, but the fact that I know that I can get it on my iPhone, it'll sync to my iPad and my Mac, so I have all of that
Mhm.
everywhere, wherever I need to go. Maybe, I guess, on any time that I need it. And I guess there's not a Notes app for Windows, but it seems like you can go to iCloud .com
Yeah.
and it'll be synced there, so you can even access
Yeah,
it
so you
on
can,
those
I've done that
aspects there.
before. You can access Notes from a Windows computer, with the exception, however, there's a super high level of iCloud security, which I actually have turned on right now. And I think if you have on that super security level in the settings, it might not work. But I definitely have done that in the past, of
Okay.
access Notes from the Windows.
Last little video that you linked to, which I just thought was great. It is from Apple. It is called All Systems Pro. Not going to spoil it. Worth watching for the 30 seconds or a minute that it is. I just love it. My favorite line, though, I will put in there is 93 unclosed browser tabs. Who can relate to that? I'm raising my hand. Great little video to watch.
Relate to that. It's a cute video. One thing I'll mention about the video is, you say it's from Apple, and that's true. But actually, if you click on that link that says All Systems Pro, so that you go to YouTube,
Yep.
it's
Goes to
not
YouTube here.
posted on the main Apple account. Like, this link is
Oh,
on
look
Apple
at that.
UAE, which is a Middle East. So I think Apple is running this commercial around the world right now. For whatever reason,
Oh,
they're not yet running it in the US. I don't know why. Maybe that'll
okay.
change tomorrow. But they thought, I mean, who knows if there's any significance to it. I just pointed out that this appears to be, even though it's in English, don't get me wrong, it appears to
Yeah.
be an international commercial that Apple has not yet run in the US for whatever reason. But anyway, but it's a
I
cute
guess I
little
didn't
commercial.
I didn't even realize that Apple would have like sub YouTube channels
They do for
for
different
different
countries.
countries. Yeah,
They
because
absolutely
you
do.
usually link to the main Apple channel, right? There is one
Right.
main Apple
Right.
channel, but
Yes.
then apparently they have some that are broken out, I assume for the UK, for Europe, or something like that. But
They
UAE,
do.
wow, I didn't even
Yeah.
notice that. I just went and just interesting. But I wonder how that would be different. Anyway, nonetheless, thanks to YouTube, you still have access to it. And it's worth the 38 seconds to go and watch that. I just thought it was great.
Yeah.
In the know. All right.
In the
So
know.
we are all still, we talked about still getting used to the Photos app and some of the other things, the Messages app and the message summaries on iOS 18.1. One of the things that I'm still getting used to, although maybe not as much of a hurdle, is the new Siri and the new features on there. We have always been able to initiate She Who Shall Not Be Named by either saying her name or his name, if you've turned that off. Or one of the ways that a lot of people have initiated Siri is they hold down the side button on their phone,
True.
right? And if you do that, it will today, if you've upgraded to iOS 18.1, it'll have like the shimmer around the screen, which I'm still enjoying very much, by the way. Or
cute.
if you have an older version, you have the little circle down at the bottom. So we've always been able to do that. And when you invoke Siri that way, you are basically then ready to talk to Siri, right? You give a command. That's what that talk to Siri is. Well, several years ago, this is not new. I think it was on iOS 11 maybe. They came out with type to Siri. There have been ways that you could type to Siri as opposed to talk to Siri. But now with iOS 18.1, I didn't even notice this, although I had seen it, Jeff, because I accidentally invoked this type to Siri feature. Because in iOS 18.1, you can actually double tap the bottom of basically any page, and that will actually bring up a little, almost looks like a search bar. But if you look at it really closely, it is a type to Siri little box that you do. You can even do this from the lock screen. So I guess I had tripped upon this because I accidentally triggered it a few times. But even on my lock screen, if you just double tap the very bottom of this, instead of like Siri waiting to listen to you, so instead of talking or invoking or telling it a command, you can type a command into this now. And I just like the way that to me, it's really a nice way that it has been designed. I like that. But I haven't used this. I mean, to be honest with you, I've always just spoken to Siri. I haven't never really typed to Siri. But I like the fact that now, if I can remember this, and it's a fast way to invoke it, I could be sitting somewhere where I can't talk out loud, or I shouldn't be talking out loud, and I can type to Siri now and ask it for some kind of a command. And that can be helpful if you're looking something up, for example, or if you wanted to go to a website, something along those lines. Now, if you don't like this, you can turn it off in the settings. You can go into, if you've upgraded to iOS 18.1 or iOS 18, there is a new settings now called Apple Intelligence in Siri. So if you go to your settings app, you'll find that, and then you'll find in there is a talk and type to Siri. You can toggle off type to Siri, so that if you just want to talk to her, you can do that. But if you want to have both of them on, then you can toggle that on as well. So just wanted to let people know, if you've accidentally stumbled upon this like I have, you may or may not have enjoyed it or like it, but you can turn it off if you need to. But I'm going to try to start using this a little bit more on the type to Siri aspect there.
Yeah. In fact, as you were talking, it's nice because you can use it without it making much noise. So while you were talking, I just typed to Siri, and it's already off my screen now, but I asked it, what is the meaning of life? And it'll give you a silly answer. It has a couple different ones. And when it says it might be traveling the world, or maybe just traveling to your couch, which either one, I don't know, it gives you a joke answer. But
thank you, Siri. Appreciate that.
There you go. Yeah, I agree. That is a nice little feature of Siri. My tip of the week, it grows off of something that I linked to in my post today.
Oh, yeah.
So what I linked to in my post was this post from Dan Morin of 6 Colors, where he talks out that one of the new features in the current version, iOS 18, with AirPods, with the latest version of AirPods, either the AirPods 4 or the AirPods Pro that you and I use, is that if you get an alert, somebody sends you a message and Siri will say out loud, do you want to reply, or something like that, or do you want to send it, instead of actually speaking. If somebody phones you, they call you and you want to answer it, instead of speaking, what you can do is you can use a head gesture. If you nod your head up and down, your AirPods can sense that by the accelerometers, and it will interpret that as a yes. And if you go back
Okay.
and forth, it will go no. So that's what Dan's article was. My tip, however, is two parts. First of all,
Okay.
you need to enable this. I don't think it's on by default. And so to turn it on, if you want to try it out, go to settings on your iPhone. This only works
Okay.
while your AirPods are actually synced to your iPhone.
Right. They have to be
While they're
connected.
connected.
Yeah.
They have to be
Yeah.
connected. Go to settings, tap the name of your AirPod Pro or your AirPods 4. And then once you tap on it, scroll down a little bit, you'll see something called head gestures. And so tap on
Okay.
that and you can turn it on. But my second tip is if you're not even sure if you want to try it, when you get to that
Right.
screen to turn it on or off, at the very bottom, there's a link that says try head gestures. And this
Oh,
is what I
yeah.
encourage you
I
to
see
do
that.
just to see if you want it. So what happens if you tap that? It will actually say, okay, now I want you to shake your head up and down. And when you do it, you'll learn, first of all, you don't actually have to shake your head up and down that much. It's not like it's a huge, I'm a headbanger type up and down. It's just a little bit of a nod, something
Just
that you could
like a
do.
recognition,
If
acknowledgement.
you're walking on the
Yes.
street, you're walking down the street, you could nod your head twice without looking obnoxious to the people around you, as you'll see from this test. And the other thing that you'll learn is when you do it, Apple plays a tone. I don't know how to describe it, but it's a distinctive tone.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's a
So that you
different,
know.
yeah, so that you know. And there's a tone for yes. And then you'll also try to shake your head back and forth for no. And there's a different tone for no. And it's pretty easy to get to know these tones. And that way, it's just sort of like while you're not looking, your iPhone might be in your pocket or your purse or something like that. So you're not looking at your phone. You want to make sure the iPhone correctly registered that you said yes or
Sure.
no.
Right.
And the tone that you
Yeah.
hear in your ear is confirmation. So what I encourage you to do is if you have this turned off, go ahead and turn it on just to try it out. But before you try it out in real life, click on or tap on the try head gestures, because that will very quickly, within 10 seconds, give you an ability to get a feel for what it's like. So I had mine turned off until I read this article last night, and I just turned it on. And so I haven't tried it in real life yet, but I look forward to seeing what I think. And again, many times it's convenient for you just to speak the word yes or no or whatever, or to tap something in your screen. But sometimes it's not. I mean, as Dan points out, you
Right.
might be carrying something and there's other people around. There may
Right.
be circumstances in which just a quick little head gesture is more convenient. And it's nice to have this as an alternative option. The only concern or thing that what I want to know is it going to have false positives and false negatives? Is
I
it going to
know. I thought the
if
same
I'm
thing.
driving in my car or something? I don't know because I haven't tried it yet. So I look forward to trying that out. But it's a fun little feature that Apple added. So I'm going to give it a shot.
When you do the try head gestures there, Jeff, does it do the tones for you so that you can hear what it sounds like?
So you'll
Okay,
have a
good.
chance
So
to hear it.
you're going through the
Exactly.
whole training session on there. And the last little thing quickly, I would say, I think I agree with Dan because I'm the same way. I haven't tried this in real life. I feel like I've had it turned on, but I've just either I don't usually have my AirPods in that I would, say yes or no to maybe some kind of a notification. So anyway, I want to try it as well. But I like what Dan says. I wish, though, that there were more options for gestures. Because if you look in that page that you were talking about, it's up and down or side to side, which, would to be the up and down is accept or reply, and then the side to side is decline or dismiss, which that makes sense for some certain notifications or something along those lines. But yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like I just want can you twist your head around? I don't know what else you could possibly do, but I feel like there would be good ways to maybe if I want to go mute or if I want to, jump ahead to like the next episode or I want to pause, something I'm listening to. That would be the main thing, right? If I'm listening to my 313 hours of podcast, I want to have some kind of a head gesture that I can say pause it, right? Because I want to listen to something. I don't know. There's got to be some other ways that they can use this, and I feel like this is just the beginning of this. Hopefully, they will allow some additional head gestures. But
I have an
we
idea,
got
Brad.
hand gestures and head.
What if you shake your head no really, really, really fast? That would be an
Yeah.
undo. Like I really did not mean to
What
do
if
that.
I do that?
So that would be my idea. I don't know if that would work or not.
I was like, I don't know if can you clench your jaw? Like, what else can these AirPods, figure out? Oh man, it's just so fun. But that's good stuff, and it is worth trying because I mean, if that could be something that would be, I can certainly see where that would be worthwhile. It's just I don't know that I've experienced that in real life, but I'm going to try to manufacture somewhere so that I can try that out on there. Good stuff there. Wow, lots of stuff. Well. Hopefully we'll talk with you next week, Jeff. We're still going to see, because I know here in the United States it's our Thanksgiving week and some holidays and stuff. But nonetheless, we've got some good things planned for the rest of the year before we head out. But hey, anybody listening in Overcast, if you do have a full subscription, go ahead and share with us. Like, maybe you could show us how much you've been listening to our podcast or other podcasts. It'd be fun to see that from some of the audience members there, Jeff.
That'd be
Thanks
fun to
as
see.
always. And hopefully we'll talk with you next week or sometime very soon.
Yeah, we'll see. If there's enough news, I mean, next week's going to be a slow week. If there's enough news
Yeah.
items to justify a podcast, we'll do it. And if it seems to just be a really slow, sleepy week, well, then we'll skip. But so, whether or not you see one in your feed next week depends upon how much news there is. So if one way or the other, whether it's 1 week or 2 week, I'll talk to you then. Thanks, Brett. Bye-bye. See you later, everybody.